A segment of elevator surveillance footage turned tens of millions of netizens into detectives. Strange behavior, an elevator door that would not close for a long time, and countless speculations emerged. After leaving the elevator, she vanished without a trace, and 18 days later was found in a water tank on the rooftop. Why did she end up on the roof? A locked fire door and a heavy water tank lid. Are these really unsolvable mysteries? Let's look at today's story, the Elisa Lam incident. Hello everyone, welcome to X Answers. In 2013, a 21-year-old Chinese-Canadian female university student mysteriously disappeared at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Originally, this was just a missing person case, but 18 days later, she was found in a water tank on the hotel rooftop. Her body was found. As soon as this case was exposed, it instantly attracted worldwide attention, especially that elevator footage. Some people said it was a supernatural phenomenon. Others dug up the hotel's dark history and claimed it was cursed, and still others believed it was a meticulously planned crime. So what is the real truth? Today, let's rationally analyze this case based on the official investigation report. To get to the bottom of this, we first need to understand the main character, Elisa Lam, because only by understanding her can we make sense of everything that happened afterward. Elisa Lam was 21 years old at the time. On the surface, she seemed like an ordinary college student. She loved traveling and photography. She had a habit of blogging, often sharing beautiful scenery and reflections from her journeys. However, if you look closely at her blog, you'll notice something unusual she wrote in her blog's introduction. You always feel like you're wasting your life. For a 21-year-old girl, which should be the best time of her life, why would she choose such a heavy statement as her blog introduction? If you flip through her past posts, you'll find more and more pain and inner turmoil. Let's take a quick look at a few entries. In her blog from April 2012, she wrote, "I lay in bed for 2 whole days, left with nothing but hating myself." In November 2011, she said, "Depression is terrible. I can't control my emotions. I might be angry for 2 minutes, then suddenly sad. I might be happy for half an hour, then get emotionally agitated again. I don't know why I'm being so candid about my depression, but I think if there are other people with depression reading this post, then we wouldn't feel so alone. I've only told a few people, and unfortunately, most of them have let me down over the past 3 weeks." So you see, on the surface, Elisa Lam seemed lively, cheerful, and loved to travel. But when it comes to her own mental state, social life, and so on, deep down inside, she was actually struggling with troubles and battles that ordinary people can't understand. It was this very girl who, in the winter of 2013, set out alone on a journey to the west coast of the United States. On January 26, 2013, Elisa Lam arrived in Los Angeles and checked into the Cecil Hotel. According to hotel records, she was initially assigned to a shared room on the 5th floor. From the 27th to the 30th, on the surface, she seemed completely normal and even updated her social media. But during these days, something very important happened. She changed rooms. She moved out of the shared room just a couple of days after checking in. So why did she change rooms? It was because her roommates complained about her behavior. They said that Elisa Lam would often lock the door and require her roommates to enter a password to get into the room, or she would leave notes on their bed saying things like "go away" or "go home." In short, Elisa Lam's behavior made it impossible for her roommates to live there in peace, which is why they arranged for her to change rooms. Soon, time moved to January 31st, and here comes the key point. This was Elisa Lam's original checkout date, but she went missing on this day. The first to notice something was wrong were her parents, because throughout her entire trip, Elisa would regularly contact home, call her parents, and update them on her itinerary and feelings. This was her habit. On February 1st, she didn't call home as agreed. At the time, her parents thought their daughter was just having too much fun and forgot to contact the family. But by February 4th, there was still no news at all. Elisa Lam's parents panicked and officially reported their daughter's disappearance to the Los Angeles Police Department. The local police were already familiar with the situation at the Cecil Hotel, since the hotel had quite a notorious history. So after receiving the report, they quickly went to the hotel to conduct a search. The officers, accompanied by police dogs, carefully searched Elisa Lam's room, the rooftop, the basement, and all public areas. Unfortunately, they did not find Elisa. 9 days later, on February 13th, since there had been no progress in the case, the police decided to release a surveillance video in hopes of gathering more clues. On this day, the Los Angeles Police Department made public a 4-minute elevator surveillance video. Elisa Lam's behavior in the video was abnormal, and countless netizens began to analyze this footage. All kinds of speculation sprang up like mushrooms after the rain. Just as everyone online was guessing where Elisa had gone, the guests at the Cecil Hotel encountered a very real problem. Abnormal water quality. Actually, starting from early February, guests had been continuously complaining to the hotel, saying that the water pressure was especially low and the water quality was very poor. Some guests even said the water had a strange taste. In response to these complaints, the Cecil Hotel contacted the municipal water supply department to ask if there was a problem with the city's water supply. They also sent maintenance staff to inspect all the equipment that could possibly have issues, but after a thorough check, they still couldn't find the root cause. The problems of low water pressure and poor water quality persisted, and the number of guest complaints kept increasing. On February 19th, a maintenance worker named Santiago Lopez decided to go up to the roof to check the water tanks. On the roof of the Cecil Hotel, there are 4 large water tanks that supply water to the entire hotel. After climbing up to the roof, Lopez began to inspect these water tanks one by one. As a result, in one of the water tanks, he discovered Elisa Lam, who had been missing for 18 days. This was immediately followed by a series of suspicious points. When Elisa Lam was found, she was not wearing any clothes. Her clothing was scattered at the bottom of the water tank. Investigators carefully examined the area around the water tank and found no signs of a struggle. Additionally, the hotel roof is not easily accessible. According to the hotel, the fire escape leading to the roof is equipped with an electronic access control system and an alarm system. Only staff members could open it, and for a woman to climb up a water tank that is 2.4 meters high is not an easy task. In short, with all these suspicious points at the time, the case instantly exploded across the entire internet. The internet was flooded with thousands upon thousands of theories, some logical, others far-fetched. So why did Elisa Lam end up in the water tank, and how should we explain her strange behavior in the elevator? Was this truly an accidental act on her part, or was there another reason? Next, let's analyze the suspicious points in this case one by one. Let's first take a look at this elevator surveillance footage. This clip is almost everyone's first and most lasting impression of Elisa Lam. At first, nothing seemed unusual as Elisa entered the elevator, but her behavior soon began to turn strange. Elisa pressed multiple floor buttons, but the elevator doors never closed. She entered and exited the elevator several times, sometimes hiding in the corner as if she were avoiding something. Then, Elisa walked out of the elevator, turned to the right, and made strange gestures with her hands. It was as if she were communicating with someone, and throughout the entire process, the elevator doors remained open. This footage became one of the biggest mysteries of the whole case, and also the most controversial part. But if we consider her actions in the context of her mental state at the time, you might realize that perhaps it wasn't so mysterious after all. Let's first look at the official explanation. According to the autopsy report from the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, Lam was officially diagnosed with bipolar disorder during her lifetime. This is a mental illness that can trigger mania, as well as severe hallucinations and delusions. It's on a completely different level from the mood swings that most people commonly understand. The report also states that several medications Lam was taking at the time were detected in her system, including venlafaxine, bupropion, and lamotrigine. These are all antidepressants and mood stabilizers. The report further points out that the concentrations of these medications in her body were significantly lower than therapeutic levels. What does this mean? It means she was not taking her medication as prescribed. Of course, this isn't just speculation. Let's look at the corroborating information. Lam's parents admitted that over the past few years, Lam had experienced hallucinations multiple times due to stopping her medication and at least once had to be hospitalized because of an episode. Lam herself also wrote in her blog, "I know I should take my medication, but sometimes I really just can't keep it up." So, based on this information, we can see that Lam was experiencing withdrawal symptoms from her medication at the time. After withdrawal symptoms appear, the condition is often even more severe than during the period of medication. Usually, during an episode, patients may become physically overexcited, suffer from severely impaired judgment, and have abnormal self-awareness. They may also experience symptoms such as auditory and visual hallucinations. Now, let's take another look at Lam's actions in the elevator. In fact, this is not some supernatural phenomenon, nor was anyone threatening her. This is the genuine behavior of a person with a mental illness during an episode. Now, there's another point of suspicion here. Why didn't the elevator doors close automatically? Many people say that someone outside was controlling the elevator, but in fact this is due to the elevator's door delay mechanism, which has been verified by several netizens. Among them was a Chinese tourist who, on February 25th, 2013, just 2 weeks after the case was exposed, specifically stayed at the Cecil Hotel to test what was really going on with this elevator.
I've already pressed 5 floors now, and it turns out that if you only press the buttons for other floors, the elevator won't move, unless someone on another floor presses the button. Additionally, according to our observation, the only way to control the elevator from outside is this one switch, and the location of the switch is within the field of view of the round mirror in front of the elevator.
If you only press floor buttons and skip the close button, the doors won't close unless called from another floor. Next, Let's analyze how Elisa Lam got to the rooftop. Investigations show that the fire exit door leading to the rooftop requires a key and is equipped with an alarm system. According to the hotel, if someone tries to open this door without disabling the alarm would be triggered and it's very loud. But hotel staff clearly stated that they did not hear any alarm. So how did Elisa Lam get to the rooftop? At first, some people speculated that perhaps a hotel employee helped open the fire exit door. Because no one else had the key except for them, it was inferred that internal staff might have been involved. But in fact, the truth is often simpler than we imagine. Actually, there are 4 ways to reach the rooftop of this hotel. One of them is the internal main staircase. The hotel has 2 main staircases, but only one leads to the rooftop. However, this door is usually locked and equipped with an alarm system. In addition, the hotel has 3 external fire escapes. We can look at these 3 fire escapes one by one through these photos. This one is at the front of the hotel and the other 2 are in the middle and at the back. All 3 of these fire escapes are open iron staircases without any alarm devices, and you can climb directly from the exterior windows of each floor up to the rooftop. Let's take another look at the on-site investigation conducted by the Chinese tourists mentioned earlier. At first, they also tried to enter through the fire door but found that the door was locked. Afterwards, they found the external staircase and discovered that the windows were not locked and there were no alarm devices. They easily climbed up to the rooftop, and when they reached the rooftop, there was no alarm sound at all. In this video, we can clearly see that by using the external staircase, it's entirely possible to climb up to the rooftop. So, did Elisa Lam get to the rooftop this way? First of all, according to clues provided by the hotel, they did not hear any alarm sound. In addition, the police dogs at the main stairwell fire door did not pick up Elisa Lam's scent either. So we can rule out that Elisa Lam reached the rooftop via the main staircase inside the building. That leaves only the option of accessing the rooftop through the external fire escape. So where is the entrance to this fire escape? In theory, this kind of fire escape ladder, any floor can serve as a starting point. You can follow the stairs step by step all the way up to the rooftop. But according to the police investigation, Elisa Lam should have accessed the rooftop from the fire escape on the 14th floor, which is the top floor. The reason for this assumption is first because Elisa Lam was staying on the 14th floor, and second, there is a key piece of evidence, the police dogs. They had the dogs pick up her scent from her room and then track it along the corridor. The dogs followed the scent all the way, but in the end, the scent disappeared near a window in the corridor. And right outside this window was the fire escape. The reason the scent trail ended there, according to the police, is that Elisa Lam exited through this window and climbed up to the rooftop via the external stairs. Since the rooftop is open and well ventilated, the airflow would quickly disperse any scent, which is why the police dogs couldn't pick up Elisa Lam's scent on the roof. Now that the issue of how she got onto the rooftop has been resolved, the next question is, how did Elisa Lam get to the top of the water tank? By looking at the on-site photos and the video shot by this Chinese tourist, we can see that there are actually 2 possible routes. The first route is that there is a small building next to the water tanks, and it's clear that there are stairs there. In theory, you could first climb up to the small building using the stairs and then jump down onto the top of the water tank. However, this is not the best option. The second route is that there are actually catwalks between the water tanks, which are specifically designed for maintenance workers to inspect the tanks. These few pictures make everything clear at a glance. Getting to the top of the water tank is actually not a difficult thing to do. So the next question is, how did she get into that seemingly sealed water tank? Many people believe it's absolutely impossible to do this alone. There are all kinds of theories circulating online saying that the water tank lid is extremely heavy and that a weak woman couldn't possibly open it. Even if she could open the lid, how could she close it again after getting inside? So without outside help, it's simply impossible. These doubts sound very reasonable. But it's precisely because of these seemingly logical doubts that countless people believe Elisa Lam was murdered. But is that really the case? Is the lid of this water tank really that heavy? Actually, we can do a simple calculation to find out. Let's look at this picture. First, the diameter of the water tank is 1.4 meters, so the radius is 70 centimeters. From the picture, the square lid is about half the radius, which is 35 centimeters. To account for visual error, let's use 45 centimeters. For this square lid, that's 45 by 45 centimeters. Based on information available online, this steel plate's thickness is approximately 3.5 millimeters. This way, we arrive at a lid volume of 708 cubic centimeters. Since the density of steel is 7.85 grams per cubic centimeter, we can calculate that the total weight of the lid is about 5.56 kilograms, which is approximately 11 jin. Plus, this lid has a hinge, so to open it, the actual force required is only half of the lid's weight, which is about 5 jin. What does that mean? It's roughly the weight of a 5-liter bottle of bottled water. So those claims that the water tank lid is so heavy that it's impossible to open are completely exaggerated. However, all of our previous assumptions are based on one premise. This is under the condition that the water tank lid is closed. But what is the actual situation? Let's look at another document. This is a pre-litigation fact-finding document commonly used in American legal proceedings, which means that the contents here are parts that both the prosecution and defense agree on and have no dispute over. The first maintenance worker to discover the blue shell was Santiago Lopez. He clearly stated in court that when he found the water tank hatch, it was open, and when he looked inside, he saw the blue shell. This statement clearly indicates that the water tank hatch was open at that time. Not only that, there's even more compelling evidence. Earlier, we mentioned the video shot by that Chinese tourist, which was filmed on February 25th, 2 weeks after the incident. This video shows that the water tank lid was still open. Think about it. What does this indicate? There were indeed problems with the Cecil Hotel's management of the water tanks. If the lid was still open just 2 weeks after the incident, then during Elisa Lam's disappearance, it's very likely that the lid was also open, or perhaps it had been open from the very beginning. So here's the question. If the lid was open, why did the initial report say that the police claimed the lid was closed? Was it open or closed after all? The statements before and after completely contradict each other. What's going on here? According to legal documents, when the police first searched the rooftop, although they brought sniffer dogs to conduct the search, they didn't find anything unusual. Pay attention. At that time, the police didn't actually confirm the status of the water tank lid. If you didn't check the water tank, how did you know the lid was closed? So the initial report that the lid was closed was an unverified statement. It was a false report. When the maintenance worker actually went up to check the water tank, he found that the lid was open. Alright, let's not dwell any longer on whether the lid was open or closed, or whether Lan Qi was capable of opening the lid first. Now, what we need to ask is, why did she enter the water tank in the first place? To most people, this is indeed a behavior that is hard to understand. But to explain this issue, we still need to first look at the official autopsy report regarding the cause of death. Here, the official conclusion is that the cause was drowning, and a significant contributing factor to this tragedy was bipolar disorder. This is because patients with this type of illness often do things during episodes that they would absolutely never do in a normal state. Because at that moment, their self-awareness is impaired. Likewise, they also lack proper judgment when it comes to danger, so behaviors that seem very dangerous to a normal person might not be perceived that way by someone in an abnormal state. In addition, there is other evidence to support this. The forensic examiner did not find any signs of external injuries, abrasions, or physical assault on Lam's body. Furthermore, no harmful substances or drugs that could have caused her death were detected in Lam's system. Her blood alcohol level was also within the normal range. Therefore, the official cause of death determined by the forensic examiner was drowning. Next comes another key point in this case. Since there was no external force involved, why wasn't Lam wearing any clothes? How can this be explained? This also became a key basis for many people to speculate that she was assaulted and then placed in the water tank. There are two possible explanations for this. The first is to stay afloat. When a person falls into water and starts to struggle, their survival instinct drives them to do whatever they can to stay afloat. Clothes absorb water, increasing body weight and making it easier to sink. Driven by the instinct to survive, taking off these clothes is a completely reasonable choice. The second explanation is paradoxical undressing caused by hypothermia. What does that mean? Let's take a look at a medical entry on hypothermia from Crisis Wiki. This entry cites a large number of studies from emergency medicine, wilderness survival manuals, and disaster rescue cases. The material mentions a rare but widely documented physiological phenomenon called paradoxical undressing. It means that when a person is exposed to a low-temperature environment for a long time and their body temperature continues to drop as they enter moderate to severe hypothermia, their brain's judgment gradually becomes impaired and they may even experience hallucinations. At this point, some people will suddenly feel a surge of heat inside their bodies, experiencing an unbearable burning sensation. Then they do something that seems completely irrational. They take off their clothes. Even though they're already so cold that their lives are in danger, they insist on undressing. This is what's known as paradoxical undressing. And this phenomenon is not isolated. It has been documented in victims of mountain disasters, avalanches, and even some people who have fallen into the sea. In the medical field, this has long ceased to be anything new. So if we look at it from a scientific perspective and suppose that Elisa Lam accidentally entered the water tank and gradually fell into a state of hypothermia, then it's very likely that she really did experience this paradoxical undressing reaction. So, those are the main points of suspicion that have drawn the most attention in the Elisa Lam case. Although this explanation may not sound as sensational as some of the rumors, it is, relatively speaking, the most reasonable explanation we have at present. What other doubts do you think exist in this case? Feel free to join the discussion in the comments section. Alright, that's all for today's story. If you like this channel, don't forget to like, comment, and follow. See you next time.